This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brett Cresswell, and I'm joined in the studio today by the one, the only music director of the Toledo Symphony Orchestra. That is Alain Trudel. Hey, Alain, how are you?
Very well. Hello, Brian. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, it's a one-on-one today. And you know what that means, because I do have a quiz.
I know. I'm going to win the quiz. I'm alone.
Well, we have to see if you get at least 50% of the answers correct.
Oh, no. Okay.
Then you will officially win the quiz. We're going to talk today about three different pieces of repertoire. This is in advance of the great violinist Midori, who is coming to play with Toledo Symphony, one of the really gems of the concert season that's happening in Toledo, because she's a world-class musician, has been such for many, many years. Yeah. Right, one of the few musicians that uses just one name, right, that we can know her by. So the title of it is Midori Plays Mendelssohn. She's going to bring that wonderful violin concerto by Felix Mendelssohn to the stage of the Peristyle. It's happening Saturday, February 18th at 8 o'clock p.m. And Alain, you are conducting. There's also the Symphony No. 7 by Antonin Dvorak, as well as the overture from the Opera der Freischütz, or the Free Shooter, by Carl Maria von Weber, along with that violin concerto. It's a really wonderful program. So we're going to do like an in-depth discussion about these works, okay?
Okay.
And now, let's begin with Midori herself, because the quiz is about Midori. We won't do the quiz right away. Let's talk about the Mendelssohn piece. I'm going to turn the mic over to you for a quick second. I got some music queued up here, so you tell me what to do.
Okay, I shall. Okay, well, thanks for giving me this time. It's wonderful. Just for a second, the program as a whole is really an idea of the great Germanic music, great Germanic repertoire. Yeah. And we think often of symphony orchestra that the core of what we play. But in Toledo, we have a very eclectic taste, right? So it's not necessarily the core of what we play. And actually, it's kind of rare that we play just a Germanic program. The only one we did before that this year was the Beethoven Schubert, right? Yeah. And it's and that program it's not Germanic, Viennese also, right? So
Schubert would have been thrilled, by the way, to be on a program with Beethoven.
I think so. Yeah, but the whole idea behind it, and it was we also had a piano concerto by Jesse Montgomery on that program. So there you go. It's our usual eclectic mix. Yeah. But I thought for this one, do something really special and have three very important works for different reasons. They're important for different reasons of the Germanic repertoire. So, we'll talk about the violin concerto. What's really interesting about this? Well, first of all, Mendelssohn, as we all know, was a wunderkind of composition. Yeah. And he wrote like the overture to Midsummer Night's Dream. He was 14. He wrote a bunch of string symphonies when he was much younger than that. Actually, some people say that he's probably the most interesting wunderkind composer that there was. I mean, we talk about Mozart a lot, but Mozart was, of course, it's Mozart. What can you say, right? But Mendelssohn, this kind of invention and this kind of counterpoint, and he came many, many, decades after. So there was a lot of music already written. So, not to copy anybody and to have that coming out of you, that's pretty big thing. That's pretty
amazing. Well, those string symphonies that he wrote, I think he was like 12 when he was writing those. I play them all the time on the radio because it's great music.
Yeah,
I like to
wonderful.
listen to that. Yeah.
What's interesting with Mendelssohn is that it's difficult to see what's the when is maturity, because Midsummer Night's Dream overture. That sounds like a work of great maturity, but it's he was 14. It's like, and the octet.
Right.
Whoa, that's also as a teenager. So it's incredible. So what Mendelssohn did also, like Haydn, he was somebody who organized things as well. So it's very important in our history to have people who write music, yes, but people who make sure that this music is played for people who can organize, like movers and shakers of the Romantic era.
Yes.
So Mendelssohn, the early Romantic era. So Mendelssohn was such a person. He was amazing. He was a conductor. They formed the Gewandhaus Orchestra, which sounds very fancy, but it's basically the the union of the tailors that come together and they sponsor an orchestra. It's not as sexy in English, right?
Yeah, so it's still going today. I mean, that's one of the great orchestras.
It's one of my favorite orchestras in the world. I love. Nobody has their sound.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dark and transparent at the same time. I mean, it's if you have a chance to anybody who's listening to listen to the Gewandhaus Orchestra.
Hey, I play it on the radio quite often.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a chance, it's going to be here because it's the most interesting programming in this at WGTE, right? So this is a place to listen to it. But this is anyway. So the tradition started with him, right? So I'm going to throw a few dates in there. In 1835, because people think it's very far from Beethoven and all that, but it's not even a decade after Beethoven there.
Yeah.
So
Beethoven died in 1827.
Yeah. So it's like just a few years after. So he's named as he started way before that, but he was named the conductor, that conductor of that. But almost in a way of what a music director is now. Like going, that making music, right? Except the music director usually don't write the music as well. But the programming music, actually, Mendelssohn is the person who rediscovered Bach and made it so that people could hear his music. So now it's just normal to have Bach in our repertoire of what we're listening and what people know. And we just mentioned Bach to anybody who doesn't even do music, who's not playing, they know Bach. But back then, it was a big discovery that he decided to push. He could have very well not pushed for it because it was not that popular, because it was a little bit austere, at that time. But he really pushed for it. So a very genuine musician, very, at the same time, he was a craftsman, but he was also a salesman, and that's what we are. I mean, basically music director, you have to be a craftsman, craftswoman. When you're with the orchestra, when you carve together the sound that you're going to make, the performance, the style, the history, the culture of your organization. But then you have to go and sell that organization. Yeah. And
so is Mendelssohn like a model for you or a role model for you as a conductor?
I don't know as a conductor. Of course, we've never seen him, right? But things he did, of course. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a few of them. Haydn is one. Haydn's a big one because he had to do so much diplomacy,
Right.
Because in the classical era, you had to please many masters, right? Yeah. But in the Romantic era, it's a little bit more affirmation of self, man's against man, man's against nature, that kind of thing. And that's a little, I wouldn't say easier because, you would have to be more like a freelance, and find your sources of revenue. And in the classical era, you were more at the employment of some nobility. And then it was in the culture to have pieces written. But at the same time, there's like a golden shackles a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So Mendelssohn is the music director of the Gewandhaus Leipzig in 1835. He hires one of his very best friends to be the concertmaster because it's very important, right? So if you make a relationship, not to be, not a relationship, but an example, like the conductor is like the coach and the concertmaster is like the captain of the team.
Yeah.
Because the conductor is not actually playing, but you need to have somebody in the players that can translate what you're thinking very often. Right. I mean, you express what you're thinking, but there needs somebody who's actually, I would say on the ice because I'm Canadian, but I mean on the field, on stage with the other colleagues saying, well, that's what he really means.
But it's interesting, though, if for anybody who has ever seen a rehearsal with the orchestra and the conductor, and I've seen this at Toledo Symphony a few times, in rehearsals, often the concertmaster, the first violinist, will turn around and give a direction to the rest of the violinists. Instead of the conductor himself. But so there is this kind of a simpatico relationship between.
Well, you have to either you have it right away, or either you develop it. But you must have it at some point. I mean, early on in the association, because you must speak of one voice. You think of one mind. Of what is the style and what is the culture of the orchestra. Mm-hmm. I say culture often because that's what it is. Really, is how we do things. And culture is how we are in our community of players and how we do things and how we hear music and how we want to share it with the audience. So anyway, Mendelssohn gets his really best friend Ferdinand David, and I'm saying that name because he gets him to be the concertmaster of the orchestra. One of the things he told him is that I'm gonna write you a concerto, right?
Well, you could do the same thing,
Yeah, but I ain't no Mendelssohn. So, but so what happens is is that, life gets in the way, right? He has to do this, he has to do that, he has to attend, he has to make the orchestra work. So by the time he actually gets to do it, it's like 9 years later.
I didn't say when, I just said I would write it for you.
Exactly. There's actually a parallel to my instrument, the trombone, because Mendelssohn also promised Mendelssohn had some very special musicians in his Gewandhaus orchestra. His principal viola was also a fabulous trombone player.
Really?
And I know. And that it's not a viola joke, but he had promised his principal viola to write him a trombone concerto.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
I know.
We have to think about that.
And I'm sorry to all violas. I mean, I love the viola. It's one of my favorite instruments. But I like trombone too, right?
Yeah.
So, but that was near the end of his life, which of course we all know was in his 30s, very young. And he passed away. And Ferdinand David wrote the concerto for the trombone.
Oh, really?
And that's like the number one concerto of our romantic repertoire.
Yeah, and you've played it, I assume.
Oh, yeah, many times. Yeah. I mean, it's not Mendelssohn, but still, I mean, what a change it would have been for trombone players if they had a concerto by Mendelssohn. Whoa, Anyway, so coming back to the violin concerto, he had like most composers, they have the idea right away. I remember when Jacques Itsou wrote a concerto for me, the first day he told me we were at dinner in a restaurant and he wrote on the napkin the opening 2 measures. And he said, do you know how much I regret not keeping that napkin? Yeah. Anyway, whatever. So Mendelssohn already had the beginning and it haunted him for a long time, but he could never get to it. So finally he got to it and then he became sick. And he couldn't conduct the premiere.
Yeah.
So, but it's okay. It's not like,
we can laugh about it now.
Oh, no,
back then it was a serious thing.
Yeah, but he didn't die. I mean, he got sick, and then he came back the season after they did it again, and he was conducting it. So, I wouldn't laugh at that. So he wrote that. But one of the reasons also that he didn't write it right away is that, and it's very rare for the wunderkid kind of, well, not a kid anymore, but like a genius like that. And that's another relation with somebody else on the program, is that he had a moment of how do you say in English, the blank page or a
blank slate?
Yeah. Well, when you're
like a tabula rasa?
No. If you're writing like a novel and then there's no more inspiration, the page is white in front of you and you can't get anything.
Writer's block?
Yeah. Okay. So he had a bit of writing.
For all you French-speaking folks, how do you say it in French?
La page blanche, the syndrome of
the white page. Yeah,
because it's like it stays there and it's
I like that better.
It's funny because I like writer's block. It's like you're blocked, and it's exactly what happens.
Okay,
right?
We'll trade. I'll speak in French for the rest of the podcast. You go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Donc Mendelssohn.
No. You're in English. I'm in French.
So
or I can translate. Then Mendelssohn. No.
So Mendelssohn was, he was on a roll. I mean, he started that job. Then right after, I mean, this is the Opus 64, so it's not one of the early ones. And as we all know, Mendelssohn died young, right? 37, 30.
Yeah.
Anyway, and he was on a roll before that. I mean, the Opus 61 is Midsummer Night's Dream, the entire incidental music. The songs without word is Opus 62. So everything was going well. He was trying to write his 3rd symphony at the same time, which is the Scottish Symphony.
Yeah.
And he totally got blocked. And he was like, and then he went back to his violin concerto and he said, well, I have to finish the symphony. So that's why it took him a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But finally, when he did it, it became instantly the violin concerto, and it is still to this day one of the top 5 violin concerto in the history. Easily top 5, top 3, maybe. Tchaikovsky, yes, but Mendelssohn is like it's how you measure the greatness of a violinist very often. So of course, having Midori coming play with us, I asked, do you think we can do Mendelssohn? And there's a special thing to that for me because I heard her the first time. I don't know, maybe she was 10 in Montreal with the symphony. I know she was, like, I'm not even joking. She was super, super young. Yeah. With the little yellow dress. She looked like a doll going on stage. And she played Mendelssohn. Yeah. And it was like, I couldn't believe. It's like, it's interesting. It's like, okay, this is mature. I mean, how do you do this? I mean,
she's kind of a parallel in a sense to the young Mendelssohn.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking of that piece with her. very often music director or also a casting agency would say, this piece goes very well with this person in that stage and that. So anyway, so for me, I think she plays one of the best Mendelssohns ever. So I was so excited when she accepted to play that concerto. Very meaningful in the history. And you know what's really interesting about the concerto is that it's the way it starts. Because until then, you would have, always an introduction. Of course, Beethoven concerto being the longest example possible. It's like 3 minutes of orchestra before the violin comes in. But let's listen to the beginning of the Mendelssohn concerto. Let's try to see how many minutes before the violin comes in.
Yes, I finally get to hit a button on my soundboard here. All right, this is the opening of the violin concerto.
And there it is. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the violin just comes in right away.
I know.
The orchestra just sets the tempo and has like the little ostinato going on.
But it's all there. Look. There you go.
It's an amazing melody. And, you usually reserve words like this for somebody like Mozart, where you say it just sounds like it already existed before it was even written. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that the playing has a lot to do with it. The violinist, the tone of their violin, and the legato that they bring to that opening melody. You know instantly, the worth of the violinist as soon as they start playing that particular piece.
It's really hard for them.
Yeah,
it's really hard for them. Because you don't have anything to warm up to get into it. It doesn't start with a little cadenza. The purity of what it is, but at the same time, it's not purity in the sense of Mozart, right? It's and you have to set, like you said, the tone, the emotion. Where are we going to be emotionally when we listen to this? Right away from the beginning to the end, because another feature of the concerto is that all those moments are linked together.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
There's a lot that goes into it, obviously. There are a lot of different YouTube clips of various conductors and various violinists online that you can find doing that concerto. And what's really interesting is to watch their preparation in the moments before the baton comes down, and to see how some folks just launch right into it without a lot of preparation, how others want a long moment of silence and they get in the mood and then they start. I'm talking about the conductors, not necessarily the violinists. Which one of those are you?
Well, I like to take a good breath. It's not very long before I start, but I like the orchestra to take a breath. Now, I say that to string players all the time because, they can, everybody needs to breathe, right?
Yeah.
But they can actually play their instrument very well with having very bad breathing, right? They cannot play as well as they can if they don't breathe well. But it's not like an oboe or trumpet. You need to take a breath. And singers, of course, that's the supreme example. But I always take the example of the singers, right? Because first of all, we never know when you guys are breathing. It's not like, okay, go, right?
Well, for some singers it is.
No, I know, but you look at an opera, you're watching an opera and you don't see people going, okay, I love you. So it shouldn't show, right? So I used to teach all the time to my students to say, listen, opera singers, they do lines the endless lines, and it doesn't even show that they're breathing. So you have to breathe in the same way. That's why I took 2 years of vocal coaching when I was a student. Yeah, well, you don't want to hear the result, but
we hear it every week here on Symphony Lab. At least you're breathing, not your singing.
That part, the end, I do pretty well. So I think for me, what's really important and what creates the sound is that we all breathe together. And the exhaling, is it like, for example, if you're exhaling like a Shostakovich concerto, right? But if you go,
and everybody has to be on the same page.
Exactly. But
the same page blanche, as it were.
No. But if you breathe together, you play together, right? I know it sounds simplistic, but it's not.
Well, it's coordination.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about, a 60, 70, whatever piece orchestra, that is a major challenge, I think.
The two beginnings that are like that, this is the epitome. But the other one's the beginning of Sibelius, because it's all diddle, 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 diddle. And that's kind of really the diddling of the sextuplet and all that. But this one is challenging. You have to find no accents at the beginning. That's another thing. If you breathe, and you breathe with the bow, that's one thing we do, is like you breathe like the bow does the same movement as the breathing, and then it comes down. It's called breathing with the bow, right? So you breathe with the bow, and then it makes that. Otherwise, if you have some people just starting right away from it's going to make a little accent. And that's the difficult thing. You don't want to go like, diddle, 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 and then, it's already ruined from the first note, right?
Well, what you could do is just ask the orchestra to play the first couple of bars as an ostinato of the vamp while the violinist gets ready, and then you just keep playing that over and over.
Oh, yeah, and then you cut for when it sounds good. No, but that's, sometimes you see conductors that go like very a vague gesture at the beginning. That seems confusing for everybody, and it is confusing, but they're trying to have this sound that doesn't have an accent. But if you can try to like breathe and just let it out slowly and relax, you know? It's a very zen kind of beginning, but you need to have a good beat as well.
Well, so you've had 5 years you've been working with Toledo Symphony, so you know there's kind of a give and take. You know each other, but now you're adding to the mix one of the great violinists of our age, right? Midori, who has played this concerto many times in the past. You were talking about having heard her play it when she was very young. How do you preserve your way of making this music when a great big soloist like this comes in and is performing the violin concerto? She's the star, obviously, of the show. I mean, are you more accommodating, or is there a way that you can sort of put the Toledo sound, mix that with what Midori is doing? I mean, what is the aesthetic that you're following there?
Well, I'm going to propose to you another way to look at it. Well, when you say Toledo sounds, is the sound that we make in different repertoire. So the sound that we make is always based on the composer. And the idea is that we meet at the request of the composer as best as we think we can, right? Yeah. Because the composer is not there, but you know, with the education, everybody and the schooling and all it's not a guess. It's always like a very educated kind of way of.
There's a lot of baggage.
Yeah, exactly, and the years of doing it and the traditions, and you know, so I'm always very confident about that. You know, that we're going to go in the right style. Now, the idea of having one and the other, the interpretation of both, I think it's not a question of a parallel thinking. It's about us looking at the music of Mendelssohn and trying to serve that music and to translate. You know, very often we say we're interpreters, like we interpret the music. To interpret the music, well, if you take the word of interpreter, like interpreter from a language, like, you know, from Japanese to English, I mean, if you don't speak a certain language, somebody's translating it to you. So the interpreter in the sense of translating. So for us, our job is really to translate what's on the page in the style of the composer to the public. So of course, there might be some differences here and there, but the idea is that if you have, like, she's an amazing musician, but she's thought about this all her life also. You know, you try to put yourself in the place of Mendelssohn and the style of the time and the way he writes. And so we're all trying to do like Mendelssohn. I'm not trying to do like Midori. She's not trying to do like her. We're all trying to aim at the genius who composed that piece.
He's at the top of the pyramid,
exactly.
Right?
So we're all aiming at the same thing. So this makes it much more harmonious and much more easier to come together.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I have a quiz. Let's take I don't want to say take a break, but let's take a pause for a moment and talk about Midori. I have a Midori quiz. Now, I've got a choice of music that I can play in the background. I can play the second movement of the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, or we can go back and do that beginning again. I also have the Dvorak and the Carl Maria von Weber, who is a Mozart cousin, by the way. And we can talk about all that later. But let's do the second movement, maybe, of the Mendelssohn, because the reason that this might be interesting to some folks, especially if they're a fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber, is this melody that we're going to hear in a second is very similar to one of the melodies that Weber used in Jesus Christ Superstar, right? Yeah. I don't know how to love.
Yeah, I know. I'm conducting that this summer, and I've been thinking about the
Mendelssohn
Concerto. Yeah.
Wow. I want to talk about that. Okay.
It's one of my favorite musicals, by the way.
Yeah. Let's just listen to this from melody for a second. Love him.
I know it's the same.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that he's borrowed, shall we say, is in the same key even. You know, he doesn't, it's cut and paste.
Yeah, well, this one is in the same key particularly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's move on with the quiz. So we know her as Midori, just the one name. What is her surname? Is it Sato? Is it Goto? Or is it that she doesn't have a surname? Now, it's just you, Alain.
I know, but I don't know anything about. I know her playing. I know her. I mean, but we don't know each other that well. Sato.
This is how we get to know each other, or how we get to know Midori a little better. Okay. You and I know each other. All right. Your answer is not working.
No, usually they don't.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, the soundboard's not working. Anyway, I'm gonna try to my best attempt at imitating the soundboard. Okay. So you said Sato. Yeah. The answer is It was actually Goto. Okay. Why did she drop Goto from her stage name? Why did she drop that name? Is it because she was a huge Madonna fan and she wanted to have a single name? Was it because her parents got divorced? Or is it because newspapers kept misspelling her name? A, B, or C?
Let's go with C. Oh, my God.
The actual answer is her parents got divorced when she was 12 years old.
Now, wait a second. Can I call Merwin?
Call up your helper there for the quiz. What did Midori's mother do for a living? Was she a professional violinist? Was she a successful engineer? Or was she a regional politician? A, B, or C? These are hard, right? If you don't know the personal background of Midori.
Can I have a Mendelssohn quiz? No, I know she was a violinist.
Yes, you got it right. Wonderful. You're 1 for 2. Or 1 for 3, pardon me.
I know.
She was a professional violinist. She was the first teacher of Midori and steered her career when she was very young. How old was Midori when she made her debut in public? Was she 6? Was she 9? Or was she 11? A, B, or C?
I would say 6.
Yes, she was 6 years old when she played one of the Paganini Caprices in Japan. She had actually been studying already for 3 years. So she started studying when she was 3 years old. Her mother got her a little tiny violin, that she could play
at 3,
on.
there would be a 64th.
Yes. 64th. That's amazing. She was 11 when she made her professional debut with the New York Phil and Zubin Mehta, right? Okay. In 1986, she became world famous for what? Is it that she was emancipated from her parents? Is it that she played 3 violins on the stage? Or is it that she performed with Elton John? A, B, or C?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Well, I'm gonna give you a clue here. She did something amazing that you don't normally see on the stage, and it led to a headline in the New York Times the next day. It says,
"Okay, well, I'll go with B then."
The answer is B. Yes.
You don't go to stay on stage and say, I'm splitting from my foe.
Exactly. The headline was Girl 14 Conquers Tanglewood with 3 violins. She was playing a concert of Leonard Bernstein's Serenade.
Oh, wow.
And Bernstein was conducting, and she broke a string. Oh. She broke the E string on her violin, so she immediately got the violin from the concertmaster. She broke the E string on that. That was a Stradivarius. Then she went to the associate concertmaster who had a Guarnieri who handed it up on stage, and she finished it with that.
Wow.
So she played 3 violins.
And that's not an easy piase.
No. No. So watch out if those strings break during the Mendelssohn, right?
I'm just going to keep a bunch of strings in my pocket.
Keep extra strings. And you have to practice, stringing the instrument really fast.
Exactly.
Okay. What was the repertoire on her very first solo album? Was it Paganini Caprices? Was it Bach Partitas? Or was it Beethoven Sonatas? A, B, or C?
Paganini.
Paganini is correct. Yes. You got that one right. Hey. Okay. She has 22 albums to her credit. The most recent one just came out this past November with pianist Jean-Yves Thibaudet. And what was the repertoire on that recording? Was it Beethoven, Bach, or Mozart?
Wow, good question. Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, right?
Yeah.
Bach?
It was Beethoven, actually.
You
She has
didn't do
played the Beethoven sonatas. Okay.
Okay.
Midori's Carnegie Hall debut came on her 18th birthday. What did she play? What piece of music was it? Was it Prokofiev's Violin Concerto No. 2? Was it Bartók's Violin Concerto No. 2? Or was it the piece we're listening to right now, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto?
Oh, yeah, I said it's the Mendelssohn.
Actually, it's the Bartók. She made her recital debut there the following year.
Wow.
Played a lot of stuff. But she, actually played that Bartók Concerto as her Carnegie Hall debut, right?
Okay.
So she's got some oomph behind her, as we say.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Okay, what did Midori briefly consider as an alternative career, having studied for it at NYU, at New York University? Is it a career counselor? Is it a social worker? Or a child psychologist? Which of those three would Midori be if she didn't play the violin? B, or C?
Can you repeat them?
Career counselor, social worker, or child psychologist?
I go with C.
You are correct. Okay. Yay!
Yeah, and that was the last question, right?
One more. One more. What does Midori call one of the most beautiful pieces ever written? Is it the Brahms Concerto, the Tchaikovsky Concerto, or the Mendelssohn Concerto? One of the most beautiful pieces ever written.
I hope it's Mendelssohn.
It is Mendelssohn, yes.
We're playing it.
Indeed. And it really is. This is a particularly beautiful part here in the second movement. And again, there's so much opportunity for the violinist to show what they can do with this concerto and everything that they have to play in that concerto. That's
Absolutely.
wonderful. Well, I want to move on because I know that the Symphony No. 7 by Antonin Dvorak is one of your favorites.
Absolutely.
And you've got a lot to tell us about Dvorak. Now, most people know Dvorak in terms of like the Symphony No. 9, the New World Symphony, especially that Largo movement, and other pieces like his Slavonic dances, which were inspired by Brahms, his mentor, as it were. A lot of pieces that we know of Dvorak, but I wouldn't necessarily put the Symphony No. 7 on that list. However, for people that listen to all of Dvorak's music, that's a real standout, the Symphony No. 7. I wonder if you can tell us about that. Give us a little prep for listening to it this weekend.
It's the one that's not like the rest. I mean, in his repertoire, it's like, oh, really? So I told you earlier in our little chat here that there was a relationship between having writer's block a little bit, which two people you never think have writer's block is Mendelssohn and Dvorak. I mean, Brahms used to say that most great composers would find their principal themes of their music in Dvorak's garbage bin. Because what he's not keeping, you can take, and it's already better than what you'd think. You know? So it flew, like the flow of his music was incredible. And then that brings us about 40 years after, or the 40, 50 years. It's in 1884. He starts writing this the symphony. Right away, a D minor symphony, something deep, and he wants to have something that's a little darker than what he's written before. Also, I mean, if you don't know a lot of music by Dvorak, like chamber music thing, it's really worth digging into that a little bit more because he's an amazing composer. For some reason, the name doesn't resound as much as Bach or as Beethoven.
No.
But Dvorak is, and in America, is very important too, right? Because he was one of the first director of the conservatory, the defunct conservatory in New York at the time, right? But it was very, very important. And his New World Symphony, of course, is out of the top 10, it's always number one, right?
Oh, you conducted it not that long ago with the Toledo Symphony.
And it's one of the I mean, it's not one; it's the most popular symphony. I mean, that people know. So, it's he did write the greatest hits, and his Slavonic dances. There's always one. It's always in a movie or something. I mean, that's very important. But this piece, he started, and then he had a lot of things happen in his life. His mother died actually, and he had this sadness that he'd never really had in his life. It was kind of not happy go. How do you say in English?
Happy-go-lucky.
Happy-go-lucky, yeah. So that year, before that happened, he heard the premiere of Brahms' Third Symphony. Not the premiere, but he heard Brahms' Third Symphony. And he was really taken by it. Yeah. I mean, the Brahms symphonies are something else, right? And for him, Brahms was the master of all masters, and because they're very different, right? Dvorak is all about tunes, is all about effervescence of ideas, like a little bit like Tchaikovsky, let's say. You know, there's always something, right? Oh, this melody, then another melody, then another melody. In English, you'd say like the guy could write a tune, right? And Dvorak is more like, Brahms is more like Beethoven's. Like, let's take as least material as possible and develop it. It's like the craftsmanship of a tune that you would write, which is, that's why people like a musician's musician, right? The Beethoven, Brahms, Mahler, those people who really develop and they have the craftsmanship of writing music, right? And at the same time, it's so beautiful that anybody in the public absolutely loves it, right? It's the music of love, Brahms, when you listen to it. So anyway, Dvorak, I wanted to go a little deeper like that, and it was out of character for him a little bit. So it took him 2 years to write that piece, which is very, you think a big symphony like that's kind of normal, but for him it's very uncharacteristic. So this piece took him a long time, and he rewrote. There's a bunch of versions of it, and like in all Dvorak symphony, the numbering of the symphony is all wrong. Because the symphony number 2 is actually the 7th, the 9 is 5. Anyway, but now we know this as the D minor symphony number 7, right? So that was a really, really important thing for him. And for me, it's the one that actually has the most reworking counterpoint and the craftsmanship, and Dvorak is an incredible composer. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he does have great craftsmanship, but this one sounds, let's say that in the classical world, between us, we call it Brahms' Fifth Symphony.
Like Brahms' First Symphony is actually Beethoven's 10th.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So for me, it's very important because it's the continuity of the lineage of the great German tradition, So there's a connection. They're all interconnected. And you have to think all these geniuses of German music, they're all within 80 years of each other, right? And not even, 70 years of each other. So Dvorak being one of the last of those before we go into the Bohemian, because he's not German, right? So it's the gateway to Mahler, the Bohemian, not in the Bohemian in the sense of being a Bohemian, but in the country that does not exist anymore, where Mahler was born. So you go from Germany and to Austria, because Austria is very different, right? It's more like Austro-Hungarian kind of tradition. And from there, you get from Prague and Czechoslovakia at the time it was called like that. And then you come back. So it's a new world. It's more folkloric, right?
Yeah.
And there's lots, and Dvorak, it's all folklore everywhere, right? The music and that's why in his Ninth Symphony, in the New World Symphony, we came to America. First thing he said, I need to know the folk music of your country.
Right.
And that's why that second movement is so popular, because it's spiritual, right? So, and it's actually, no, sorry, this second movement is a native Indian tune. Yes. That is mixed with a spiritual. There's the two tunes in that movement. But this symphony, he was able to put all of his effervescence of folk music inspiration with a development a la Brahms, to put a bit more French, more like Brahms, and to put the two together. And that's why it took him so much time.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting when you learn how long it took to compose the piece and what went into it and all the different versions and what have you, because when you listen to this symphony, I think it's unlike anything else. You talk about the folk music influenced pieces of Dvorak. I think it's unlike other pieces in his repertoire And, the symphony is 40 minutes long or something like that? I listened to it in its entirety the other day, and it just flew by because of those melodies that catch your ear. It's a very easy listen, but at the same time, it's very thought-provoking because it has its darkness. It has some meat on its bones, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just a wonderful recording. A wonderful symphony. I do have an excerpt that I want to play, and this is probably the most folk-like part of the Symphony No. 7, the third movement scherzo.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it here for you. Let me play that. Now, you could analyze that, and it's so rich and so full, but also very simple. And I think that sometimes genius composers, the composers that really know what they're doing, they make great art out of what is seemingly simple stuff, right? You hear those melodies, you hear Dvorak, and you think, oh, that kind of reminds me of the Slavonic dances, or it reminds me of, the lighter music that Dvorak wrote. But at the same time, it has this underpinning that's very, very visceral. It engages you.
One of the most difficult symphonies to play and to conduct, actually.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, exactly what you said. I mean, we have to make that everything that's visceral, everything that's really complicated in it must not sound complicated. So we have to go through all of it, clean everything, take the, how do you say, the SOS, what's it called, those, the brush when you clean
the scrubbing pads,
scrubbing
SOS
pads. Yeah,
pads.
exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make a promo, but
I thought you were talking about Morse code there for a second.
No.
You wanted to run out of the room and get away from
No.
Okay.
Like the scrubbing pad, and you have to go and everything, and just finesse everything in there. So after that, when you're done with that, then you can just sing. But you cannot just pick it up and sing it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that with the Ninth Symphony. You can, kind of. There's never a piece you can just do that, but you can do that with some work a little bit more. This one is a kind of almost the epitome of having to go deeply into each of the movements, and it has orchestral excerpts for everybody. And it's if you have a second oboe audition, you always put the beginning of the second movement, and it's something people don't even notice when they listen to it. But it's so difficult because it's slow and it's soft, and it's you can
very sense that level of complexity, but it does, basically at heart, it's a folk song tune.
Yeah, but our job, again, coming back to translating, our job is that people don't have to work so hard when they listen to it in the concert hall, because we fixed all the, we try to bring them as many solutions as possible, so they don't, they finish their day, they come, they can sit there and have an experience, and not going they're working really hard.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to a concert and feel more what we're doing than what the composer's intent was, then we've failed. So we're really trying to work super hard to make an experience that is only Dvorak's music and not us working really hard at it.
Yeah, I think that even if this was the only thing he had written in his entire career, that he would still be a famous name in classical music circles. I mean, where would you put Dvorak in relation to some of the other great names you've mentioned, like Brahms and Beethoven and, what have you, composers that span 100 years or so?
Okay, you want to put me in tears? I mean, it's not tears, but tears. Oh boy! I mean, right, top, the top of the tier. That's just after the Triumvirat. Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, the three Bs and all those. But just and then after that, and it depends what you like, also, right? I mean, because some people say, no, for me it's Mozart all day,
Right.
And I understand that too. And some people it's Mendelssohn, but he's really up there with them. I mean, the thing is that how could I say, is this question of name recognition sometimes, that and not as much as the other. You will hear probably more Dvorak in your lifetime, then you think you're actually dead because he's everywhere. It's in the, like the humoresque and the dances. We hear them exactly. Yeah, from the time you're a kid.
A lot of people don't even realize. They think it was like a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, and they don't realize it was Dvorak.
Yeah, basically his music is everywhere. And for me, it's very important. And important, like Mendelssohn, he came to Mendelssohn did it in Germany, but when he came to America to start a new school, they went and they got him. They said, we need the best of the best in Europe to start our tradition here. It was in New York, and they went to get him. They couldn't get into everybody, right? They could have asked anybody, but they asked him. So that's a little bit. It gives you an idea of the stature of the artist, right? And he really tried. He stayed 3 years, and he really made a difference, Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because sometimes you need somebody from somewhere else to point at what you have that's exceptional where you live. And that's what he did. He pointed at the folk music. He pointed all the classical aficionado and composers and people who encourage classical music. He pointed them towards the folk music and of their own country. So
do you think that opened up doors then for other composers to follow suit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We don't often talk about the influence that specific composers or performers have had on the culture, on classical music as a whole, but this is a wonderful opportunity to kind of dive into that a little bit. Now that I've got you alone, I'm not hitting my soundboard. In fact, it's not working on one half of it, so...
Sometimes that's a good thing.
as we're finding out.
I'm just happy I got 6 answers in the quiz. So I can, because I was going, no, if I have less than 5, I don't win and I'm alone.
You can say you win. I'm going to... Here.
Oh, no. No, you put all of them at once now. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Well, this is a wonderful concert, a wonderful opportunity to hear not only Midori, who is like one of the greats of all time, playing one of the greats violin concertos of all time, and the Symphony No. 7 of Dvorak, which we've been talking about. We don't hear that program by orchestras all that often. True. Great opportunity to see that. You are starting the concert with the overture to Der Freischütz, which is an opera. Der Freischütz means the free shooter. It's kind of a dark and scary and gothic kind of, story that goes on there. But the music is really interesting by Carl Maria von Weber, who, as we mentioned earlier, is actually a cousin by marriage of Wolfgang Mozart.
Yeah, of Constance Weber. Yeah, Constance Weber. It's not the reason why I chose him on the program. Again,
that's a little classical tidbit I was sliding in there.
We're talking about, you were talking about those people being influential, like what do they bring in the reason, Dvorak coming to America and also Mendelssohn, the influence in his community. Well, probably the biggest influence of the 3 composers on the program is Weber.
Really?
And we always go, first of all, who's that?
Yeah.
And second,
that was my reaction when you said that.
And second, what's Freischütz? What's the title of that? And we never hear that one. And we're talking about very early. We're talking about in 1821, like Beethoven is still around and going strong, and this guy comes out and he writes what is the first German romantic opera. So this is the opera that inspired all of Wagner and then Strauss. And then, so it's the genesis. Is that what you say?
Genesis. Yeah.
It's the genesis of all the romantic operas, all this big romantic tradition. People say, well, Wagner, more important, changed the world. Well, Wagner, he revered the Freischütz. For him, that's like, and not just the music in the overture, but there's some really like spooky and scary music in and orchestration, and you don't know where it came from. It's like Symphonie Fantastique, right? And also in the 1820s, right? How did he come up with that? I mean, there was some little spike of creation here and there in Europe, and probably all over the world in different kind of cultures. But in what interests us today, like classical Western classical music, this is a very important, like this is the beginning of the German opera. I mean, for sure, it's not Fidelio. I mean, which is a Beethoven opera.
Right.
But we know Beethoven, greatest composer, my number one, but not an opera composer. But
a lot of overtures, though.
Amazing. But the Freischütz, and it's no mystery why there's so much horn in all of Wagner's operas and music, or Strauss. The Freischütz starts with a horn quartet. The overture. And why? Because it's a hunter. Because it's hunting music, right? So it's all, folk tunes again, but transposed in the mind of a genius and going in. And when it comes out, it becomes those horn melodies. And the way it's two sets of horns, the low, the horns in one tonality, not low and high, but two in one tonality, two in another tonality, which also will be the way Brahms writes music after that. So this is a very, very influential piece of music. And I remember when I was in school, it was like drilled into us, that piece. It was like, this is influential. We play with the orchestra all the time. And it's not something that's done so often. I mean, you don't see it on the concert stage so much these days, Freischütz Overture. I mean, it's kind of...
You don't see the opera hardly at all, at least not this side of the ocean.
True, yeah. But this is a very, very influential piece of music. And it has, if you listen to it and you know what you know now, you're thinking, okay, this is the piece of music that influenced when you listen to the Ring cycle or something like that. This is what started it. Like Wagner would always go back to this opera and go like, wow. And Liszt, all people wrote paraphrases, like Liszt would write paraphrases for piano, like a big set of variation on the Freischütz, on music by Carl Maria von Weber. Hindemith, even after that, is one of his greatest pieces, is Symphonic Metamorphosis, on themes by Carl Maria von Weber.
That's so interesting.
I know, it's very, and it's not something that people bring to the front of the stage so often. So I thought we have an opportunity here because it's true that Midori playing in our concert stage, people will come and we want to hear her, right? But I said, well, this is also an opportunity to slide in a little something of the music history. It's not very long for just an overture, right? So it's like 10 minutes, but something that people go, oh wow,
It gives you a taste of the opera itself. It's kind of a little bit of a hit parade. I used to sing that aria from the opera.
Of course, you're tenor,
and we always feared the cabaletta at the very end. Each fast and that appears, I believe, in the overture as well. So you got some of those real melodies in there. I was really struck by what you said about the use of the horn in the opera, because I hadn't considered this before. I mean, the horn was associated with hunting before that, and there were composers who, made an effort to use the horn. They would call a symphony the hunt or, something like that. But in the opera and in the overture, the use of the horn really becomes a synthesis of the horn call, being the hunting horn, as well as a symphonic instrument, and really kind of blending that and making it different than anybody had done before.
Well, it's not only the hunting, it is the forest.
Oh, yeah.
Like when it starts, sol, mi, do, mi, re, fa, mi, re.
I knew that we could get you to do some solfege.
I mean, no, this is such a great tune, the beginning of that. No, I sing on pitch. It's okay. So I'm just not a singer. But when you hear that, it's like, okay, this is not hunting, but this is, it puts you in the context of it. And then you go and you hear Das Rheingold, the beginning of the ride. And again, the horn puts you in the context of the water that's mounting, that's coming down. So using the horn as depicting the nature of where you're going to be is something that started with that. And that's a big, because before that, yes, it was about hunting. I mean, it was very pictorial. It was like, I am picturing people hunting because they're on the horse with the horn, which that's what they did, right? Yeah. Not only in Saint-Hubert, but in all over Europe. But using the horn as, this is an instrument that you use for the horn, but we will also take it to put as a piece of the set of the opera a little bit, So it's not a prop, but it's an integral piece organic piece of what the music is going to be, what the drama is going to be. And that started there.
You've changed my whole perception of the opera, I have to say. Having sung parts of it and having heard it over the years, I was never aware of that. See, even I learned something here on Toledo Symphony Lab. That's great. Well, this is a wonderful concert and has been made all the more wonderful just by talking about it and the connections between these pieces today. I've been talking with Alain Trudel, who is the music director of the Toledo Symphony, a little one-on-one that we've had today. It's been very enjoyable. Thank you so much for...
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity of going in depth in that repertoire.
Yeah. This concert is happening Saturday night at 8 p.m. It's at the Peristyle in the Toledo Museum of Art. The great violinist Midori playing the Mendelssohn Concerto. We're also going to hear the Symphony No. 7 by Antonin Dvorak and the Overture to the Opera Der Freischütz by Carl Maria von Weber. Alain is conducting. Midori's going to be here live in person playing that wonderful Mendelssohn that we talked about earlier. Again, thank you, Alain, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. Don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. You can also call up the box office if you want tickets to see Midori hear this wonderful music. That is at 419-246-8000. My thanks once again to music director Alain Trudel. I'm Brad Cresswell. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.